We're actually live. 3, 2, 1.
Okay. This is the 8th time and we're still having problems. I'm starting to think that live streams need to be, the rules need to be with the KISS principle in mind. Keep it simple, stupid. Things that we have talked about, albeit bad sound multiple times and bad video other times. We had talked about investing in mobile homes, drywall, leveling houses and mobile homes, home plumbing, floor ideas, and how to find a good handyman. And then the last one was electrical. So all those things you can go back and see if there's everything that you wanted covered in it. If there's not, you can call in a question. I did have somebody, I have some questions that I might talk about. So I told them that I would try to do that this time. The first thing that, and then I have a theme that I want to talk about also, and it kind of covers one of the last part of the things that he or she requested. I really didn't pay attention. So, the first question was central air versus window units and mini splits. Okay. So it's actually the least expensive way to air conditioning, to provide air conditioning is a window unit. And there's two reasons. One is the low cost to put in. And you can put it in each room if you want, and then effectively it's zone air conditioning. And that each person can set the temperature that they want in their room. It's still going to be cheaper than, it's going to be cheaper cost, it's going to be cheaper purchase, and cheaper install. Now, when it comes to heat, there are ways to beat heat that is inside of a window unit. That would be a vent-free heater that is propane or natural gas that's mounted to a wall. And I have that in, I think, every rental that I have a vent-free heater. The reason is, in the wintertime, so whatever storm or tree falls because of wind or just ice causes power to fail, or even a brownout, which we don't really experience, I don't think, in this area, but I know it happens elsewhere. When those brownouts fail, even if you have central heat in there that is natural gas or propane, they have a safety feature in it where it has, if it has, it's called a heat limit switch. So when that heat inside the exchanger inside of it gets a certain temperature too hot, it shuts down the gas regulator and you lose your heat. So that would mean that in an emergency, the vent-free heater which is mounted on the wall, if it's propane, you'll still be going. If it's natural gas, I guess Texas found out that you could actually have natural gas shut down. So vent-free heater, a vent-free heater on the wall is going to keep you warm despite any kind of power failure. And the cost of it for a big one is around $200. Having it, installed might cost you more, but because you have to have your fuel line to it. From that point, if you want to push out heat to rooms that don't have that heater close to it, you can use a fan, and that's what I encourage. But if times are bad, you can still have heat even though you have no electricity. At one point, we had a we had a on-demand gas propane water heater. So not only did we have heat, we had hot water. So, it's something to consider. when it comes to heat. A vent-free wall-mounted heater, or even a stationary one that sits like a fireplace. Those don't have any real danger. They have had oxygen depletion sensors in them since, I think, 76 or something like that. Anybody can correct me if they know better, but they've had no problems with people dying. Now, the old radiators and things like that, those things were using the oxygen in the room, and so you could literally, that's why the old timers in the big cities would go and crack the window, the old habit of cracking the window, because you don't want to suffocate. So now I'm going to say that, you know, the most efficient dollar for dollar cost is a vent-free wall-mounted heater. So now we've talked about window unit and then heat. The next, the least expensive next is the wall-mounted heater, or the propane and natural gas heater.
I think he's also asking about air.
Yes. So, then after the window units, would the next inexpensive thing would be the mini splits, and they can start around 500. If you look around, you can find some for 500-600. There are some disadvantages with a mini split. They actually do have a fill kit that you can buy for the Freon. Otherwise, you've got to hire somebody to do your electrical, if you can't do that yourself. And if you can't do your fill kit, can't find one, then you have to hire somebody to put the Freon in after your lines are, you know, your setup is installed. The disadvantages to a mini split, it does not get to every room, except it's sort of like the vent-free heater or the little air conditioner or window unit. It only deals with that room. Again, you can do certain things to push out heat that it might put out. They are almost always heat pumps. Effectively, heat pumps can't really compete, or can't really put out enough heat when the temperature outside drops to 30. So if you can supplement it and it can help circulate it more, that's something you can consider. Now, in regular central heat units, your gas units have become way more efficient as time has passed, whereas electric basically is, you know, it's the same efficiency as it has ever been. Very little difference. There's a lot of electronics now, and the cost for a central heat unit now can be somewhere between $7,000 and $12,000, and maybe even more if you have a big house. Whereas a mini split can be somewhere between $500 and $5,000, and then whatever it costs to have it installed. But a $5,000 mini split is one with 4 heads, and that should include the cost of install. But so what we're talking about is somewhere between $200 and $900 for a window unit, maybe even $1,000. $200 to $900 for a window unit for air conditioning. $500 to $5,000 for a mini split, and somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000 for a central heat and air. There is another couple of other ways to get heat and air, and that one would be a self-contained unit on the outside of the house, and then blowing through ductwork through the rest of the house. So now all those rooms you can close down vents, but basically they're all controlled the same temperature by a thermostat. So keep in mind that if you have a heat pump, unless it has heat strips in it, it's affecting, and that's what they do. So if it gets below 30 degrees outside, heat strips kick in, and now that efficiencies you were hunting for when you purchased a heat pump is not efficient anymore. It's electric heat, which is very expensive for its use. I see a lot of people using package units or the whole complete air conditioning and heat system, whether natural gas or electric heat, package unit outside. They do it, and what I've been told by the people who have done it is that they can just buy a unit. They don't have to hire an air conditioner. They can just unbolt one and bolt in another, change the ductwork to fit, hook up to gas and electric. They can hire somebody to do that real cheap. It's not the same as, so like the amount of profit that is being made is ridiculous when it comes to air conditioning and heat for a central unit. The reason I say that is I think you should be able to get a 3-ton unit, a 3-ton unit central heat and air, a split system for $3,500, $3,000. And what we talk about, they start around $7,000 per install. And that's already got the ductwork there. So $3,500 and less than a day's worth of work, $3,500 a day. Minus, let's say you spend $1,000 in labor. The company's making $2,500 a day. Probably do 2 installs in a day. So you're looking at $5,000 a day. A company would be making. That's outrageous amount of profit for just a crew of 2 people and maybe an office manager. That's 20 days time, and that's on the cheap side. There are those that charge $12,000 or more for a central heat. So the reasons that this is something to think about is that you can replace the window unit even with heat strips yourself. You don't have to hire somebody to do that, or even if you hired somebody to do it, it wouldn't cost very much. The mini split, again, it could be cheaper to replace it. Now, second one I was wanting to mention for is air conditioning, and you don't see it as much anywhere but in the west and the southwest, and that is swamp boxes. And there's yet another one, but it's not. It's probably the most expensive so far. So that the swamp boxes, it takes water and goes through, and it blows air over it, and it can be very, very efficient, because basically you just have some water and you have electricity pushing the fan. That's very, very inexpensive. And that works really good where you don't have a whole lot of humidity, because that's going to kick out humidity. And it's really neat. I like it. I don't have that. I have one of those swamp boxes. I think I actually have 2 of them, but they're not a complete. I got them because of the fans. It was, something that was inexpensive. It really works well for blowing air over you if you're really hot in the summertime, you're working outside. So that's one way to think also. The last one is geothermal heat and air conditioning. So that is putting lines in the ground, usually 10 feet deep or so, so that 50-something degrees in the ground, 54 or something like that at a certain depth, cools those lines, and then the lines come in and you blow air over those lines. I'm making it sound simple, but it's actually quite expensive to install, to have people to dig. I mean, if you do it yourself, it's not. And you can do these, you can use it in your home. You can use it in your greenhouses and things like that. Overall, that's probably the second cheapest as far as air conditioning, and maybe the second cheapest as far as heat. The cheapest would be the natural gas or propane vent-free heater that's mounted on the wall or standing on its own. And the cheapest would be a swamp box, say, if you have the area that you can use it. So those are your choices. The most expensive is your central heat and air. and then you're paying a lot of money to have that installed. As a matter of fact, my son is working as an air conditioning tech on a big business he's in the mall outside of in Bellevue, just outside of Seattle, and he talks about that air conditioning guys can't even install the split system because technically they're not supposed to handle electricity, not even the micro electricity, because you have to have electrical license for that. So not only would you be an air conditioning person, you would have to have an electrician. Now imagine how expensive that would be. So there you go.
I know you've got a thought process going, but I've got a question.
All right.
Hi, I wonder what a 16 by 74 shingle roof would cost with labor on a mobile home 17-year-old roof.
Let me see my phone. I have numbers in there. That's just doing nothing but getting higher. So you're going to have it. I should have it. Before I go speaking out of turn, let's see. Excel spreadsheet. There's a lot of stuff in the Excel spreadsheet. But in that spreadsheet, I have pricing to compare, although I'm usually quite confident. I don't do shingles. I know how to repair them. I know how to install them. There's generally lots of people that will install shingles way cheaper, and I just don't see there's profit in it, but you have to have, to do it legally, you have to have a lot of insurance. It's something like 60% of whatever it is you charge. Let's see here. Shingle tear off double layer is around $1.35 per square foot.
And we've got 16 by 74.
Right. So just to tear off, and usually after you have 2 layers on, so that tells you that if you have 1 layer on, you can do a second layer. But after 2, they want you to take it off, and it costs at least $1.35 per square foot. So 16 by 70, you said? 774. 16 by 74. And then to install the shingle, I don't know if I have that on here, because I just don't do it. Let's look at it. It's quite expensive. A shocking expense to me. So 74 by 16, 700. It's like 7,000. I would guess if they don't have to take the shingles off, they have to take the shingles off. You're at another 1,200, 1,300. So you could be at anywhere from, I'd say 5,000 all the way to 9,000, depending on who's doing it. And it's so hard to keep up with how fast the prices are going up for people who do labor. And roofing is brutal. I would put it shingle roofing at the same level as, or maybe just a little easier than doing concrete work, depending on the concrete work.
Depending on the time of year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they do it no matter what. I mean, you can't do it with the snow coming down. You can't do it with the rain coming down. I mean, you shouldn't. I believe me, I've seen people do some pretty. So it's what I would say.
He said 5,000 to 9,000.
So it's
6 to 7 without taking the shingles off.
so $4 per square foot. It really depends too on what kind of shingle you get. So anywhere from $4 to $8 a square foot. And you're talking about let's see here. 74 times 16, 8, yeah, 1,184 times 4 is 4,736. Then
do these numbers translate elsewhere, or is this just like where we are?
no, that's I looked it up on Google and that's what it's. I mean, it can be way higher in bigger towns. It can be a lot higher if you're near shingle damage areas like tornadoes and hurricanes and things like that in Florida and central Oklahoma. The pathways for tornadoes are now going further up, going into Chicago. Those reason it's getting higher is because they're having to do it more and more in emergency situations. So that pushes the prices. And as soon as the roofing contractors get used to charging, it's sort of like the air conditioning people that I was talking about. They got a lot of nerve to be charging that much. As soon as they figure out that they can charge that much for shingles, that's what they're going to do. And the more they get used to doing it, the higher the prices get. And the further along they go, they end up having to pay for repairs done to drywall inside because somebody didn't do the shingles quite right. The longer they're in business, the higher they get, and so that price is pushing not just because of inflation, but also because shortages of labor. And I'm going to harp on that. I'm telling you, our birth rate's way off, so people doing this kind of work is just less and less people in the world, and less people that want to work that hard. And since the 60s and 70s, we've been telling kids need to go to college. So now, I think it was a guy named Kevin Samuels. I was watching him talking to somebody, and he was talking that women try to find that guy that makes $100,000 a year or more, and it makes him a high sought-after man. They don't want to date the contractor. He's the one that's making more money than the people with Bentley, and he's driving a truck. That is because there are less people doing the work. So this price. So if you were talking when I said $4 a square foot, and at $8 a square foot for that same project would be $9,472, and that is not taking off the shingles. That would be another $1,700, $2,000. So you could be $10,000 easy if they had a no conscience, and depending on the area. So that's why I mean, and then people get even metal roofing contractors get surprised because you can actually do metal roofing quicker and do a better job if you do it right. Same with shingles, way cheaper than shingles. I'm telling you.
And last longer.
It will last longer. There is no such roof as a roof with no maintenance. And a lot of people think that shingle roofs are better because I didn't have to replace anything until it was time to replace all my roofing. But whenever they go in to replace all the roofing, guess what they're doing? They're finding out damage around the vents that weren't maintained and say, hey, there's some plywood we're going to have to replace, so you're going to have to pay for that too. So yes, you're paying for the maintenance, you're just paying for it at the end of it all. That's usually when you call them and say, hey, I got a roof leak. Oh yeah, your shingles are old. And whenever they give you an estimate, then you get a surprise. Sort of like when you go to the dentist to get with insurance, and he goes, oh, by the way, your insurance didn't cover it all. Here's some more. So you're going to get that extra kick when it comes to the billing. So that's something to keep in mind. The insurance on roofing is pretty powerful. I mean, the workman's comp on that, and the liability also is just as high. I think gangsters used to sell insurance. Hey, you better pay us, or something bad's going to happen to your store. Way back in the day, guess what? You got insurance for your store to, just to have insurance because somebody might get hurt, or they might do damage to your house, and those guys got to cover it all. So it's really high. I personally think that a metal roof is the only way to go, but I've had people straight up tell me I have nothing but bad times with. I've never had a metal roof that didn't leak. I've had a couple of metal roofs leak, mostly no. But the ones that did leak were oddball situations. And I just got through working on one. It was a rubber roofed double wide mobile home. They use it for doing temporary offices. And this was converted into a house. Well, when I end up tidying up and closing up all the inside of the house, and then the mini splits were put in on both ends, and a vent-free heater was installed for emergencies. When all that was done, the house had kept really warm, and all that heat stayed in the house instead of going out through where the windows were inefficient. Now they are. It stayed in the house, and the house got really warm. And this is the first time I'd ever seen this, but a rubber roof got hotter than the metal on the outside, causes condensation run down the metal roof until it finds a screw or the seal. In this case, it was using a masonite siding to hold the rubber roof on the outside edges. So it run in behind the strip of masonite holding that rubber roofing, and just rot out the wall all the way down. And it would start leaking, run the water inside the roof on the ceiling, hit the plastic that's supposed to be like a vapor barrier, and the plastic would run sometimes all the way across, causing stains where the roof didn't leak the first year. And I didn't install that roof. Somebody else did. And as far as I thought they did a good job, but that black rubber got hot and stayed hotter than the metal, caused condensation underneath the metal. So how did I fix that? First, I thought it was the ridge cap foam was a problem. Then I found that didn't fix it. It slowed it down, but it didn't fix it. So I ended up putting what you call double bubble insulation, which is like an R9 rated 1/4 inch 3/8 thick insulation. I put that underneath it. It's foil face on both sides underneath it, and it has not leaked since. That's one that I had. The most common leaks that I've had is lack of maintenance. There's screws that can be tightened after about 4 or 5 years. And there are generally 1 or 2, and if not 5 or 6, vents that go through the roof, plumbing vent, those kind of things. And they actually have to be maintained. So everything requires maintenance. Relationships require maintenance. Everything requires maintenance. There's just less of it. And how long does a metal roof last to shingles? The best shingles out there are going to be around 30 years, and that's prorated. You can still have problems way earlier than 30 years. You just get a warranty based on what's left, sort of like with your battery. If your battery goes bad, it's a 5-year battery, and you had 1 year left on that out of 4. You use 4, and you had 1 year left. You're only going to get the cost of the battery that 1 year left out of, so 20% of it. It's the same with shingles. It does not cover the cost of the install of those shingles, which is the most expensive part. It just covers the cost of the shingles and whatever percentage is left of that warranty. Whereas a metal roof, most of your decent metal roof, and it's really, you have to actually request to get the low warranty metal, and you're saving less than 50 cents a square foot trying to save that kind of money. And then usually the person who does that is somebody's trying to save money and not tell the customer. So now I'm going to tell you that most of your warranties are around 40 years. That's for color. And I don't know if you know, but barns have had tin roofs on them for 100 years. I suggest that you may have to paint that metal roof at some point as part of your maintenance, but you probably won't have to replace it. I've been around metal roofs now for 30 years. I've not seen one that rusted through. I've had a lot of these people talk about, what is it? That if you don't put the slip sheet underneath, which is a paper that they've come up with, or to provide protection from the shingles touching the backside of the metal roof, that it will cause the metal roof to leak. Well, 30 years ago, I did metal roofs and had no problem. So what I'm saying, after this long-winded way talking about shingles, is that metal roof is far superior.
The way you do metal roofs, have you ever seen condensation issues
Yes.
with your method?
With my method? Well, I had to learn when I first started. If I ever, I will, try to say I've never had an issue saying the wrong thing to a woman. Believe me, I have made mistakes. I just don't make them over and over again.
So
Not now. Whenever you have any kind of distance between the metal and where your the main part of the roof is, say if you're stripping it with wood, I have learned for 20 years now that you need to insulate it with now I use a double bubble. Back in the day, when you stripped it with a 2x or 1x, I would put cut foam in between, and that made it better. It actually was stronger too, because you could stand on it and not worry about it crinkling or anything in between the 16-inch center or 24-inch center wood that you fastened to. But I have learned now, which I had not ever done a metal roof over a rubber roof, that I suggest you put that double bubble insulation. So my method? No, I don't have problems with condensation. The one problem I have had peek up here and there is that the roof vents that they make, or vents that they have for a bathroom, it sits on a shingle roof on a mobile home particularly, or double wide usually. It sits on there in a sort of flat way because it's longer than a single wide. As single wide is like 8 feet on both sides, and a double wide is 16, let's say. So what happens is, being this lower, the storm will come in, a really heavy storm. It'll hit that metal and bounce up inside that vent, and then drop down and drop water through the vent. Sometimes it doesn't drop the way you think it will, because that vent's not always directly above where it has a cover on the inside of the bathroom. They got a flexible ductwork that runs over, and so it might build up inside that vent that has some little hole in it, which this is something I've experienced, and then leak down through. So these are the kind of experiences I've had, not condensation problems. I've not ever had. Way back in the day, say 20 years ago, I had a guy. I used to tell people, we need to do insulation, but I had a guy. He was a nice guy. I said, hey, I'm going to put insulation. I kind of put it up as a question. You want me to put insulation on it? And he goes, no. How much does it save me if I don't? So back then I was doing foam. I said, well, it saved you about $300. Oh yeah, let's not do that. Well, when I had built the addition onto that house, it never stopped leaking through there. It took me forever to figure out with my simple head.
The same guy who asked you about condensation said, thank you, you have inspired me to try in on my old single wide with a curved roof.
Yes, and an old single wide mobile home with a rounded roof. I used to take metal stud and build a peaked roof and over it, and actually extend it out over and make a soffit and fascia. Boy, that was it was never as expensive as other people, because I've seen people do it with wood, make a wood peak over. I've seen them where they build a barn over their mobile home and actually request that's what they wanted, because my friends not ever had a problem with the roof leaking ever again. When I just now that I know better, I was like, no, I'm not. You can get somebody else to do that, because I don't want to be tied to it. Think about doing the job wrong or more expensive. After you're done and you leave and go down the road, those people will never call you up to complain. They're just going to tell everybody they know that you did a bad job. It cost them a ton of money, and it still is a problem. So that's the silent advertising that you don't want. What you want is the good advertising that people will, talk, hey man, I found my favorite mechanic. This is who I go to. That's what you want. You don't want the one, man, whatever you do, I'm going to go to that guy. I paid it. He did do the job, but man, he charged me a lot, or it didn't work very long. So when building a roof over or barn over a mobile home, it's not practical. You end up having to do weird things to build siding onto that to make it look like more like a home, and that's usually my goal when it comes to mobile homes, to make it more like a conventional home. So yeah, I mean, the rounded roof that I've been doing now for about 15 years that way, it's been really surprising, and it's really helped out a lot of people on a budget. You don't really care what the roof of your mobile home looks like. You want it to be better, and you would like it to be a solid color, but you don't care if it's peaked. So rounded roof. And I kind of fell into that, and it has its unique roof rumble problems. Whereas also, and it goes down the road too. I've had roofs that I've done go down the road 70 mile an hour, and they held up just fine. So yeah, more power to you, man. And I'm glad to be of help. But wouldn't it be great if everybody helped each other, shared their knowledge? It would be a great place. Anyway, this other person asked about Cool Seal versus a metal roof. Cool Seal, I don't use Cool Seal in it. Cool Seal was generally, there's nothing wrong with Cool Seal, it's just not very pretty. It's gray, and it has oil in it, and you stir it up until it, when you get it and you open it up, it's it has to be stirred up, because it'll just look black and soupy looking. So you stir it up, and the gray starts coming up, and you stir it up until it's consistently one color gray, light gray. And then when you put it on, it gets thicker toward the bottom, because the material's down the bottom. That's what it's all about, how much you stir it up and how good a job you do. Putting it on is a real hassle. The reason I say that is if you're not careful, that thin coating of Cool Seal has oil in it. It'll go down the siding and ruin the siding. It'll go get on paint and ruin the paint. That oil base on it causes grief. That's why I went to the elastomeric white stuff that they have now. The white stuff, I don't rely on it totally to cover larger cracks, so I fill in the large cracks with tar, and then I go over it with the elastomeric. So around the vents, around the edges, and I've got videos on how I do that. But yes, Cool Seal and elastomeric are about the same cost, around $100 a 5-gallon bucket. And I think you're going to end up spending money to get a brush for sure, maybe two if you got somebody helping you. You're going to buy some tar to fill in the larger cracks around your vents and around the outside edges. So we're looking at $12 for a bottle, $15 for a can of tar, maybe $200 in materials, and then 5 hours of labor. So you're looking at $250, $300 plus labor, $400 or $500. Whereas the metal roof is going to be somewhere around 2,000 to 3,500. I know some metal roof guys are going to say that's too cheap, but I don't. I do that, and it's, I can make $1,000 a day. Well, minus my help and fuel and things like that. I just don't have the nerve to charge anymore. So you're going to have to. Your metal roof is going to last. You still have some maintenance around vents. Your metal roof is going to last 30, 40 years. I've got some metal roofs that I've done that are 32 down in Texas and Florida before I got here to northwest Arkansas, northwest corner of Arkansas. So in that 30 or 40 year period, you're gonna seal your cool seal roof's going to cost you $250 to $500 every 3 years. So let's say 30-year span, you're comparing it to a 30-year metal roof. You've done it 10 times, and the price is going to go up 10 times. 300. That's $3,000, and it will not be the same price 10 years later. It'll be more. So you're looking at $3,500 is going to cost you in constant labor and whatever. Usually you'll let it go until you get a leak, and then you got damage on the inside, stain sealing at best, and whatever it costs to fix that. So you're going to spend that amount of money in the first 10 years. In the 30-year period, you're going to spend 3 times as much, probably more than that, because the cost of the Cool Seal or elastomeric, white elastomeric roof coating is going to go up, just like everything. So I'm going to say in a 30-year period, you're going to spend $10,000 to $15,000 on sealing up that roof, plus whatever damage is on the inside. A metal roof, you're going to have the upfront cost right now of around it'll cost you for the materials around $2,200 for a single wide, maybe less. And your maintenance is going to be less than, you want to pay somebody $100. That'd be, you could do it yourself, but say you pay somebody $100, and then after a period of time, every 3 years or so, same time you would have to be coating, you're saving a ton of money. And the metal roof in 40 years is still going to be there. It's still going to be there. So Cool Seal versus, I understand the use of sealant on a metal roof of a mobile home. I understand. I well understand the budget. You're going to do what you can as you can afford it. So there's your math. In the long haul, you're way ahead to do a metal roof. Regards the exterior metal, vinyl, T111 or Hardy board, my viewpoints toward those, there's some really nice looking metal siding that goes up and down on houses now. It's real expensive. And there is lap siding, sort of like vinyl siding, that is metal, very expensive. It has a tendency to chip and scratch. Of course, it fades, but it lasts a long, long time. It's very durable. So you got double the cost, and it will fade. That is, you're going to pay more for it. Now, when it comes to vinyl siding, it's probably the least expensive.
Farmington, Missouri, is that within our?
I don't know where Farmington, Missouri is. So when it comes to vinyl siding, you can actually put it right on the old metal siding of a mobile home. You can put vinyl siding on just about anything. And I've seen some really ugly houses get covered up with vinyl siding. As a matter of fact, I saw one that was a log cabin that it was inside, and they put vinyl siding over it. So when it comes to vinyl siding, it's probably the least expensive as far as labor and cost. There are problems with vinyl siding. You cannot mess with it when it's cold. because it will crack and bust. I did one job where we had to take the vinyl siding inside the house because it was right at 5 degrees outside. Wind chill was massive, and it was cracking. So I had to keep the material warm as I could till I hand out a piece at a time, and we put that up. Boy, it was cold.
They're 5 hours.
5 hours away, yeah.
Um,
So what is it they want done?
They're asking about the duct in their double wide. They are not getting heat or air conditioning in the master bedroom.
Okay. You can take a hand mirror, the kind that you would look at your face with if you're doing your makeup, or a rectangular one like so, and take a flashlight on one end of the ductwork. So that ductwork runs from one end to the other about 4 or 5 feet from the outside, all the way from one end to the other. So take out a vent on one end of the house, and then take a vent further away, put a light down in there, and then stick your hand mirror in the other. Now you can also take the hand mirror, put it in at an angle, shine light, and you can look down that ductwork both ways, and you can see what's in there. But I would suggest one of the things you need to look at is the crossover ductwork that goes from one directly underneath your central heat and air over to the other side. Generally, that's flexible ductwork, and animals have, in the name of getting warm or cold in the summertime, they lay on top of it, squash it down flat, and or dig into it. And you would have heat or air conditioning underneath your house. That's a classic. That's not saying that's what your problem is, but that's a classic one. What I have done is found porn collections inside the ductwork. I found, yeah. I found dead animals inside the ductwork that long died. I had this lady raised French bulldogs, and she had the room all kept totally where she could wash it down. It was pretty clean, but the dogs were pissing down the ductwork grill, and it rotted right through the aluminum ductwork. And it's amazing what a dog peeing on something can do. I went to an air conditioning job. They said the air conditioner wasn't working. Actually, I sent this guy 7 foot tall working for me at the time out to look at it. He says, "Hey, Phil, you got to come over and look at this." Their Great Dane had pissed on the condensing unit so much that it was no aluminum left. It was just copper lines. So I've seen a monkey take the cover off and poop in there. I can go on. There's some pretty strange. I've seen possums in there. I've seen people just a lot of trash, sweeping dirt in there till it's 4 inches. They barely get any air. So yes, there's any number of things. I'm not saying that any of those things is what your problem is. What I suggest is if your master bedroom is all the way to the end of the house, a double wide or any single wide mobile home has this unique problem. And in a house, what you do is you take a larger ductwork, say 14-inch, and you go and you keep it as further away you get from the main source of your central heat. The further away you get smaller and smaller with ductwork, and that keeps, sort of like hydraulics, it keeps your air pressure higher or at the same amount at the further away it gets. So you reduce your ductwork. You're not doing that with your double wide or your single wide. It's the same size all the way. Now, how do you get the same pressure or better pressure to that far room? You got to close down vents, not shut them down all the way, but close them down so that most of the air conditioner heat doesn't go to the first rooms on that side where the central heat is coming in. So you're going to close down vents, you're going to push more air to that far room. That could be your problem. So your floor vents have adjustments in them, so you just slowly push, more, close off those vents a little bit, all the way into your master bedroom. If it's at the end, usually it is, big room, and a bathroom off to the one side. you'll find that it'll push more air. A second thing to look, or I guess this would be the third thing to look at, is if you've installed or had somebody install new doors, they usually look at the doors and say, "My goodness, this door is 2 inches off the ground. What are they thinking?" So they put a new door in. It goes all the way down to the carpet. The reason that the doorways are up 2 inches, and sometimes you see vents in the door, is because that's where your return air is. It pulls the air back out of that room to recirculate it and push. So if you have that door all the way to the floor, it cannot push any more air in, whether it's cold or hot, because it's not returning. It's like filling up a balloon that's solid. It's not going to push any more air in. So there's your 4 things: the crossover ductwork, something in the vent, closing down your vents a little at a time, and make sure you got return air. That would be underneath. There is no ductwork like in a house where you got a duct that pulls return air out of that room. It's going to come underneath the door back to the unit, and then either make it a little bit colder or a little bit warmer depending on the season. So there's your 4 things. That's what I suggest. That's what I've seen over and over. But look in there. Sometimes the ductwork gets pulled away. I don't know how old your house is, but the older houses, animals get in there and tear up the ductwork. But everybody that has a mobile home, one of the things you need to do, even if it's new, is you take your floor vent out, and the ductwork is either fiberglass or metal, rectangular, probably 14, 16 inches wide, 6 inches deep, but it hangs down from the floor joist. So it's up against the floor joist. Floor joist anywhere from 5.5 inches to 7.5 inches thick. So you got to have a little bit of ductwork going up to your floor vent, going through your floor. Guess what? That's usually installed really sloppy. So here's what I'm telling you: new house or older house, get some foil tape, even if you have to duct tape, because duct tape won't last. I don't recommend it, but foil tape. Reach in there and seal up all those edges where that connects to the ductwork and connects to the floor. You're going to find that there's tracks that is pushing out heat and air conditioning that should be in your room, not underneath the house. Or it's going to bring in cold air in the wintertime and hotter air in the summertime. So I guess that's 15. Yeah, so you look inside the ductwork first. But the biggest thing is going to be the closing down the vents and push that air toward because it does not have the smaller and smaller ductwork further and further. It goes away from the central air. That's probably your problem. Somebody before your master bedroom has got their vent wide open, and then maybe wide open in the living room. So all the heat and air goes into first rooms, which the central heat and air will be somewhere near your living room, generally.
And there's none by the time it gets there.
Or in the kitchen that's connected to the living room. It's one of the neat things about double wides is they have lots of room in the kitchen and the living room. Massive amount of room.
Beautiful kitchens.
Yeah.
Especially if you cook.
I've seen some fantastic things done with double wides. So we were talking about siding. Vinyl siding is probably one of the cheaper ways. It's not necessarily long haul the best. The reason I have questions about that or have doubts about it being the best is because if a hailstorm comes along and knocks holes in that siding, and yeah, the rocks from a lawnmower gets kicked up and makes a hole in that siding. The profiles, there's a whole lot of different shapes of vinyl siding, and even if it's 3.5 Dutch lap, not necessarily easy to find. And guess what? That sun faded that color, and you're trying to match the faded color. If it's on, you know, you have choices. But anyway, that's another discussion on how to repair vinyl siding on. I can talk about that, but it has its issues. You can also do vinyl siding that is insulated, and that is really neat. That makes a lot of improvement on a conventional built home and a lot of improvement on a mobile home. A massive amount of difference, but it's expensive. The most fun and the most massive impact that I have seen is they make a vinyl siding that's shaped like log cabin, and it's insulated. Man, it just looks like a Lincoln log, and it's really neat. I don't know if I like the dark brown, but they have gray and then a cedar look available. I think the name of the company is Monticello or something like that. I've done several, and man, that's really impressive. And I've done it on mobile homes, and it just makes it look like a little toy log cabin. And it's expensive, but it does make a big difference when it comes to heat and air conditioning. Now, T111. T111's been around for a long time, at least 40, 50 years. 40 years, I'm sure of. You can do cedar or you can do pine. You can have really thin and you can have really thick. So you have a lot of different choices when it comes to the expense. I don't have a lot of confidence in the longevity of it because it delaminates between the water coming down, and it does last a long time if it's maintained properly. And it's sort of like relationships, you know. If you maintain it properly, do a good job of maintaining it, it can last a long, long time. I prefer screws. I know a lot of guys prefer nails. Cedar tends to be a little fuzzier, and it might last longer, but you need to maintain it paint-wise. You will have more maintenance on T111, sealing the lap joints, and not as much as Masonite. Masonite's the absolute, it's cheaper, but it's a terrible, I don't even know if they sell it anymore. But T111's pretty good. It'll withstand the rock and hail damage. It has a specific look. It lends itself to what is the word? It looks budget conscious. But if you do some exterior things like nice looking plants around and shutters and really pretty trim, and maybe even do anything to pull away from the basicness of that siding.
Isn't T111 heavy? Are there any issues with adding extra weight to the walls?
Yes, but T111 has different thicknesses, different depths. The really good T111 is really heavy. Are you asking me if you can put it on a mobile home? Yes, you can. You'll want to take off the metal that's there, or the masonite that's there, or the vinyl siding that's there. Okay, is it enough weight to make a difference on a mobile home? Not really. So I'm going to say no, it's not a problem. Now, on a house, it certainly isn't a problem because you're sitting on block on the outside of the house, generally. It's not a problem. I would, even the best stuff, which is quite expensive, really thick, but they make a real inexpensive, thin T111. I think it would probably be longer lasting than vinyl if you maintained it properly.
Can you put it over the vinyl, can you put the vinyl over the metal siding?
Of a mobile home? Yes. You sure can. I think I have a video doing that. But I've done it many, many times, and it does fine. I use screws again. so that, you know, where the laps don't fall out exactly where the random way that they frame mobile homes. I'd use a wafer-headed screw, a metal screw, and then holds it down. It does. You can't. To get away from the oil canning vinyl siding, which is caused by expansion in the heat, makes the material grow and it ends up wrinkling the vinyl siding a little bit. You wouldn't want to run your screw all the way down or your nail. That's why they have slots where that nail goes. It's not so like, okay, you can just be anywhere in here. The reason it's there is to keep allowing that expansion and contraction of that vinyl siding to slide on that nail or the screw. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a little bit of oil canning, which is wrinkling. It's not usually a big deal. But yes, you can go right over the top of that siding that's there. But you won't be able to do that with T111. And then finally, hardy board. It used to be that hardy board lap siding was competitive price-wise.
You don't have to remove the metal. It
No.
won't hurt the walls.
No. No, it will not. And again, the metal acts as your vapor barrier, which you would have to put up if you put vinyl siding. It's already doing the job of exterior siding. It certainly will do the job of condensation. So yes, you leave the metal there and it will not hurt anything. And I've got houses that I've done for 25 years ago that way. Never had a problem with that. Is there anything unique about? Going around windows is unique, but you know, when you're doing vinyl siding, you run into a lot of odd situations. You know, vinyl siding was used to cover a lot of rinky-dink makeshift work, and it makes it look way better when you put vinyl siding over it. So yeah, I mean, it's nothing unusual that a vinyl siding guy wouldn't have already seen. Finally, there was a hardy board on here. I've done hardy board on houses and mobile homes. There's a lot of weight on that also. Hardy board is probably the longest and the toughest, longest lasting and the toughest of them all. Hardy board, I have used the regular 4x8 sheets. I've done it with the plaster and with the T111 real thin, not very deep profile. The hardy board will last a long, long time, provided you paint it. And guess what? The paint lasts a long, long time. There will be some maintenance around the edges wherever you make a cut through it or along the bottom edge. It does not hold up well if the water gets to an unpainted area. It does not hold up well if you don't get the edges sealed where water might get in there. And if it's touching the ground, it will not last. I promise you, it will not last. It's not cheap, but it is probably the longest and most durable of all of the siding. I would lay odds. There is one other siding out there. It's sort of like a chipboard that I don't remember what it's called. I did some higher end of it called diamond coat siding. It's very expensive, and it looks like it's got a wood grain look on the outside of it, but it's chipboard. The same kind of chipboard that you would put like OSB on the roof or the flooring inside a house. It's got big chips and everything, but man, that stuff's durable. It's hard to cut, and it looks really good. I have some on one of my mobile homes. It's doing pretty well. It's only been there for 6 years, 6 years. So it was left over and they wanted me to throw it away. So instead of throwing it away, I recycled it. And it looks pretty good. It's really dark brown. They have some lighter colors. It's really long lasting. It's not as expensive as hardy board, but I just don't think it will last as long as hardy board will. And both of them require making sure any cracks are sealed as time passes, caulked up and then touched up. Hardy board, even vinyl siding. There's a lot of things that, people think vinyl siding, I don't have to work on it, sort of like driving your car until it breaks down. They don't think about it until it's already done some damage. But yes, all your siding requires maintenance. There's just nothing that you work with that doesn't require some kind of maintenance.
If you put vinyl siding over metal, do you cut off the little drip edge gutters off?
No.
That's holding your roof off.
No, that little fake, okay, let me see if I can figure out how to answer this. On a mobile home, that little drip edge is it's not really a very good gutter because it fills up real quick. What it's really doing is say, hey, that's a gutter. No, what it's really doing is holding the metal roof on your mobile home. So when you tell me you have that little drip edge slash gutter, you tell me you have a metal roof over that home. Because if it was shingles, it would have a soffit over it and you wouldn't have that issue. So if you take that off, a good wind will come along and just pull it off, peel it up like a can of sardines. And I'm not going to say it's impossible to put back on, but it's definitely a Humpty Dumpty situation. I've had to work on houses that had a small section of it peeled up, but when I first got up here to Arkansas, I was talking with my uncle and said, why are they taking all the gutter off of that house? Doesn't it need it? He goes, well, that's a real problem. And we went, he didn't really explain why. When we came by there probably 2 weeks later, because they had put vinyl siding on it right up to that edge, that roof was gone. It was laying in the field. And there was nothing but rafters and part of the insulation was out. So, no, you need to leave. You can cut it off, but you need to leave all those screws that are holding it there. They're not necessary for it to be held there. It is holding that roof on the outside. There's a few staples that they use to hold it there until they get the gutter on, but the gutter is on there finally to hold that metal on, particularly going down the road, but high winds and everything. You don't want to you can cut that off where it's flat, but do not unscrew it because that part that's holding that metal roof on, you want it there. And by the way, a lot of those gutters are rotted through, so I can understand, or filled up with stuff. They're not doing their job. I understand why you want to cut it off, but make sure you leave the part that holds the metal roof on. Okay. And you got written here, why should you look at the trades? Why should you look at the trades for a career?
No, that's another topic. Don't go down that.
Okay. I was going to talk about vinyl siding and other siding. Somebody else got a question?
Yeah, what was the brand of insulated vinyl siding for mobile homes that you recommend?
I used a company called Kaykan, spelled with a Kaykan. They have a brand called Monticello. That was for the vinyl log, and they also have an insulated vinyl siding. Kaykan's really inexpensive comparatively, or they were. I guess I should at some point talk to them and get a display from them and talk about their prices, because they beat Lowe's. Lowe's doesn't have much in the way of choices, even if you consider ordering, and they're higher. Lowe's is higher, Home Depot's higher. So you go to all the vinyl siding people that sell vinyl siding, and they're all making pretty good money. Yeah, Kaykan was probably the most competitive, period. And it's very noticeable how much their prices are cheaper. So Kaykan is where I was getting the insulated siding. At one point, I used another company, and it wasn't log siding. log insulated siding. It was another one.
Ed Trumbull said he was just looking at their website and it looks nice.
Yeah, it's really. I think I have videos on doing that on a mobile home. And by the way, it's not like you have to, buy it all at one time, although it's generally not going to get cheaper. You might do one side at a time. Go from, and by the way, when I should say, I just got reminded of something. There's another siding that you can put on houses and mobile homes, and that is the log siding that you make. They run through a mill, a planer, and turn it into a log. Yes. So you can do that to a mobile home right over top of the metal, or right over the masonite, which is what I did. And then we stained it. Enough so that I was so impressed with that I looked into what it would cost to buy a mill where I could buy the 2x6s and push it through, and then have another business. Maybe have somebody just sitting around making log siding at some point.
It's beautiful.
But that is a log siding. Really cool. It's about $3,500 to $4,000 to get the bits and the planer that can handle that. There's videos of them doing it if you want to see how that's done. But you can buy it. There's a place not far from here. I don't remember what it was. It was $3 a square foot, something like that. But closer into town, it was higher. But it was still reasonable. So you might look into that too, a real log siding. And it did have an insulating property. But I will say this, a year later, since we've done it, some of the logs have peeled out, and we're going to have to cut that section out, put in another piece, and, that kind of thing. I installed all of it with screws. And I used the log, one of them to go on the corners. I think I've got videos on how we did that. So you might think about that if you want to do that. It might actually be quite a bit cheaper than log cabin insulated siding. The log insulated log siding. I think it's going to be at least half as much. Just something to think about. Other siding. When you start thinking about siding, I did a lot of plaster in Florida, in Texas, and you do that on block wall generally, but you don't have to. You can be doing it on metal stud. You can be doing it, which I did for Disney. I think I did some for MGM. But we did a lot on houses, and I did some here in Arkansas. When I couldn't find supplies for it, they said, no, that's a dying trade. Well, if you're building houses out of block, it's not a dying trade. You're still going to be using it. So now that'd be Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, across the south there. They're gonna have less trees, and they're gonna try to build houses out of block. And then you're going to put plaster on the outside of it instead of having to look at that block all the time. Is there another choice after that? Yes, you can do what they call an EIFS system, which is it's exterior insulated finish system. So that actually is foam, and it has a coating over it, usually an 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit more than an 1/8 of an inch thick, and then you put a color on it. And that color can have a worm finish. It can be a sand finish. It has choices, not a lot of them, and it has a lot of different colors. The big mistake that I see in commercial and in housing when it comes to EIFS systems is that you're supposed to back wrap, and you're supposed to seal very well at the top. Those are two fatal flaws. Now, why am I saying it? But it's because what back wrap does, you take that foam and you put the glue / not really glue. It's the same kind of finish that you would put on the final, before you put the color. It's like a real thin plaster, but it comes in 5-gallon buckets, so it's got chemicals in it. Use that same to stick the foam to the backside to the wall, and you put a screws to hold it. Hopefully, you hit something good, and it holds it there. And it makes dents in that foam. Then you cover it all over smooth. And well, you're supposed to put what they call back wrap. You put a coating of that around the bottom edge or the top edge, whatever the outside edge that it's going to, and you take the mesh that you're going to put on all the way over the top, and you just put it on there and then screw it to it. So that's hanging there. When you get ready to do the final coating on it, or the base coat, you fold it over into that base coat, and you put the mesh over the whole thing, and you fill all the mesh holes with it, and then you let that dry, and then you do whatever colors you're going to put in there. Now that foam can be in the shape of a castle. I mean, you can draw it, they can cut that foam out, and you wrap it up nonetheless. Another one I've been seeing them do with EIFS systems is not putting any mesh at all. Here's the problem with that. If you don't back wrap, it will tend to pull off of that on the edge. If you don't put the mesh on, it will absorb water into that foam, and it will rot out whatever it's connected to. A lot of times exterior drywall or plywood. It will rot it out, and then it will run down the wall and rot out the bottom of the framing. It will do it. It's not maybe, it is going to do it. If you don't put that mesh on there. The next worst thing is not putting a good top and keeping it sealed on the top. There's a cap that goes over for the fake fronts on homes, and particularly on commercial buildings. If you don't make sure that's maintained, it runs water behind it, rots it all out. Finally, this is something I've been seeing a lot. The commercial buildings, motels and such, they hire painting contractors to come along and paint different paint colors, which now it's like dark colors and weird things like that. And you talk to the painting contractor, which I have, was like, hey, you do know that EIFS system is meant to breathe in and out. If you put paint over it, it voids the warranty, which is usually 30 years. Okay? And he goes, oh, no, the paint doesn't do that. So what happens is 10 years later, that foam ends up not being able to wick out the moisture that's inside of it. And guess what? That it builds up condensation inside that foam. It's got nowhere to go. It's not breathing anymore. It runs down the foam and rots out the building. There's a ton of companies making a bunch of money just going back and fixing that stuff. But it takes 10 years for you to figure it out. That company's already out of town, or, been sued by somebody else and they're out of business. Sort of like your shingle roofing companies. By the time you go get your warranty back out of those people, they're already gone. So it is really cool. To get back to plaster, which goes, you can put mesh over anything and put plaster on it. And I say, I've done it on solid steel. I've done it on metal stud, or I've done it on, I've used diamond lath. I've used diamond mesh lath. I've used K-lath. I've sprayed on plaster, and I've put it on by hand. You can actually put on multiple colors or layers of plaster that have color in it that you mix into it, and then it's got that color in there. But what you do, 3 colors or 2 colors minimum, you can then cut with a pattern, or we actually made a pattern. You can cut brick into that plaster. So you would have the regular gray without any color as your base coat, and you go over it with a yellow and a white mix, or a yellow and a light brown, or what you want to do, red and mixtures of black or dark browns into it, and you just kind of skip it into it. Then when you cut your grooves in it, it shows the gray just like it would in mortar. And so you got color, you got a but it takes somebody that has some experience doing that. And I don't think that's cheap. I think that's expensive too. But long lasting, yeah, long lasting plaster is. The enemy of plaster is water getting behind it. There is other siding out there, but we're getting into some pretty obscure things like the gunite sprays on top of balloon-like rubber buildings, and then they change up the colors, and it's usually a mix that ends up letting that plaster breathe also. So when you paint over plaster, you don't want to totally seal it. It needs to be good paint. Some kind of elastomeric that stretches and tends not to let cracks get in. But you'll have to paint it. It lasts a good long time. But I don't think it lasts as long as Hardy Board does. I'm really impressed with Hardy Board for its longevity. All right?
Would you list them by order of what you think is best to least?
Okay.
All the different sidings.
Well, some require more maintenance than others. But if I was to go, the cheapy T111, they make some really cheapy stuff. Masonite's the absolute worst. No, don't get me wrong. Masonite itself can last a long time. You just got to maintain it every year. Go through there and seal up any cracks and paint it if it needs paint. I mean, you keep an eye on it, and it can last a long time. The cheap T111 or cheap wood siding, it's nowhere near as bad as Masonite, but it requires maintenance. And T111, the really good stuff, and I think there's probably 3 levels. You need to keep up with it. Generally, a stain would last longer because it has depth and everything, but you're still going to have to seal up all your edges and so anywhere water might get in and be in an invasive situation. So your worst is Masonite. Your second worst is the cheapy T111 or the thin T111. Vinyl siding would be the next worst, but also the least expensive. So the really good T111 or just regular vinyl siding, they probably have the same basic cost. And it's more labor on the T1 on the vinyl siding, I think.
Is Hardy Board as good for insulation?
No. Hardy Board doesn't really function as an insulator. It does add some, probably like an R9 level, because you're lapping over. You're not gaining any insulation. It depends on where you're at, but you can take that metal siding off on a mobile home, or the Masonite off on a mobile home, and put in good insulation. The insulation that they have in those walls, they did the very best they could to make it look as though they put insulation in there. You can take that insulation out and hold it up to the sun, and you can see through it. Okay, so you can take that out and put better insulation in, then do your vinyl siding, and you won't have near the need for an insulated siding. So that's something to think about when it comes to cost. The same with houses in the 50s and 60s. And if it goes back into the 50s, it might not have any insulation in it. I've seen it where they had vermiculite, which is sort of like sawdust. You open up an outlet, and a whole pile of sawdust come out of the wall. Talk about flammable. Or absolutely no insulation in there, and then you can blow it in. You have to cut holes in drywall on the inside or holes on the outside, and then pump it in. I ought to do that at some point. So I use the same insulated blowers that they have in Lowe's and Home Depot. You can buy the paper and blow it in the walls. There's certain problems with that. I'll do a video on that. I haven't done that in quite a while. But the insulation if that's your issue, you might consider trying to get the insulation in the walls done. But you do it at a section at a time. Insulation's not cheap either, but it certainly makes a difference for heat or cold. Yeah. On sound, by the way. I had one couple have me put sound bat because their neighbors were noisy. So I did that, but I'd been telling them, hey, you're going to have to change your windows too. Like, no, we're going to keep our windows. They end up changing the windows because the windows were flimsy. And these people were partying, so the music was coming right through the windows. But it did help. It did help with insulation. It did help with sound.
So you have to cut the drywall and reinstall the new insulation?
When you're talking about blowing in insulation, you cut a hole. And so I did work for the Office of Human Concerns Weatherization Department. How's that for a long name? So they would take people that were lower income, maybe retired, and try to bring their home up to a much more insulated. So we'd put insulation in the floor, and we'd put insulation in the walls. They were wanting me to put insulation in the walls, try to figure out a way to do it because they were having problems with it. They're going inside of a house and drilling holes in the wall and then repairing it. It's quite an ordeal for people that might have the house packed full of furniture that you're going to move out and they're living in. You're drilling holes. You drill holes every 16 inches in the middle and at the bottom at the top of the wall. And if there's a wind bracing in, you might end up drilling holes in the middle. So you got all these holes, you're cutting drywall and getting dust over everything. And guess what? Invariably, they were telling me that these people had their whole rooms filled full of stuff that they had to move to get in there. It's like, we'd like you to see if you can figure out how to do the next two projects. So what I did was I started taking vinyls. Originally, they said, hey, here's what this one guy said he could do. I want to see if you can do it. And I did it. I didn't like the look of it. But what I did was they make test caps for the drain lines, sewer lines. Whenever you want to test it, see if it holds water to get an inspection, they make a plastic test cap that sticks in a 3-inch line or a 4-inch, but it's called a test cap. So what I was doing was taking a hole saw, like they recommended, and drilling a hole through the siding and then putting test cap over it after I got through blowing in the insulation from the top with a hose until it came out the bottom. Okay. The problem with that, it looks bad with plastic test caps all the way around the house, top and bottom of it. But they were happy to have it. Don't get me wrong, those people were not ungrateful. But I felt bad about it. I told them, son, let me come up with something else. So what we ended up doing was the lap siding on usually an older home. We'd pull off a couple of pieces very carefully at the top and pull off a couple of pieces at the bottom and then put it back. Yes, we did have some damage, some broken material. So we just got really good at being careful with that stuff. So, and what I was using was that the blown insulation that you put into attics. And I didn't use the Pink Panther Owens Corning. I used the recycled newspapers, things like that. And it's fireproof and all. I end up using their machine. In order to use their machine, you have to buy for no cost. You end up buying 15 or 20 bales of insulation. Well, some of the jobs didn't require but 5, depending on where there was one wall that wasn't insulated. It was like, they said, well, we can't let you have the machine for free unless you rent 15. I said, well, what if I just go ahead and buy 15 and then I'll bring back the 10? As long as you don't tell us, we don't care. So I just take it to, every time I got 15 bundles and then return 10, but I got the rental of the machine for free. And Home Depot had the same similar situation that Lowe's did. Then Lowe's changed their price to you need to leave a check for deposit of $250. I said, okay. So I leave a check and or I use a debit card and they charge my account and I return it back the next day or the day after. And they didn't give me my money back. Take 10 days. Well, I might rent that machine 3 times. They got $750 of my money, and it's going to take anywhere from 10 to 30 days to get back to me. I was like, hey, man, you guys got a lot of my money. Can't you just hold one check and it's all deposit on me bringing back the machine? No, that's our policy. So I went to Home Depot and I said, hey, let me sit down with you guys. I'll let you hold this check. And if I don't bring it back, you can charge me for it. I said, by the way, I'd like to buy this machine for $250. I was like, how much does it cost to buy it? Oh, it's $3,500. And you only want a $250 deposit? Okay. So with Home Depot, I end up, buying thousands of cubic feet of insulation from them. So that's what we did. We end up blowing the insulation in. And you could do that with a mobile home. Especially if you're going to put the siding over it. You'd be drilling a hole or opening up the siding, which might be tricky, and blowing the insulation into the bottom. Now, you have to know if it's coming out the bottoms, but you open up the siding. It'd be messy. But if you use like I was talking about, the test caps for a 3-inch line and then taking that blower and hose blow in there, it'll come out the bottom. You got it full. I promise you can. But you're going to put test caps. You're going to have a whole bunch of test caps on your mobile home until you put your vinyl siding on. So there's something to choose from. Another siding. I have seen people use slabs of wood that was cut off of logs that they turned into lumber, and they sell it by the truckload. It looks pretty bad. I have seen some better than others, but it is better than having no siding. I have seen, what is the word? I've seen people put plywood up and paint it, just regular plywood. As long as they kept it painted, it looked okay, but it still looked like an unfinished job. But they, you can also do strips to make it look better. I've seen it. You just got to maintain that stuff because it will delaminate. The layers of the plywood will delaminate. The chipboard will certainly get fuzzy if you don't keep it painted. I have seen people do metal roofing for siding also. I've seen a lot more of that here recently. It's kind of neat. I think if you go at it, break it up a little bit, it looks good. So
I'm going to ask you, I'm typing this. She says, I manage a mobile home park and have a couple where the heat bill is too high for my tenants because they're older. And I was saying that would probably be the best thing, and then to make sure the underbelly has insulation.
what kind of heat do they have?
What kind of heat do they have?
If it's electric heat, I can understand that. It's going to be high. So the people generally want their bedrooms cooler, not warm. Maybe a little electric heater in there, but that's a little electric heater. Plug-in heater is hard on the electrical system, but let's just say that it's not. It's about $40 a month to run all month long. It's about $40 a month per the heater. Your water heater, I'm going to guess about $40 or $50 a month. So your electric bill can get really high. Now, there's some things you can do. There used to be a secret. Oh, well, get rid of all your incandescent bulbs and go to LED. Well, now everybody knows you can't even buy the incandescent bulbs anymore. Electric heat. It's the most expensive heat out there.
And the least
Yeah. So go to a vent-free heater and keep the central heat and use the fan to recirculate it.
Gas lines in the park.
Yeah. So might consider getting a propane tank and run propane to it, and then instead of using the electric heat. So I'm going to give you, for instance, and this is something I've got 14 mobile homes in the mobile home park. This is something that run into through the years. Okay. I can't afford to fill my propane tank up. They want $500 to fill it up. Okay, I'm going to tell them, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to tell them, I said, I promise you, if you don't fill that propane up and get ready to go through the winter, say $600-700 or something like that, you're going to pay that much for 1 month electric bill. 1 month. Okay. And nobody ever listens to me. It's very rare. They have to go through it. They have to go through because the dead of winter, they'll be having a $450, $500, $600. I have seen $900 electric bills with electric heat. Okay. Generally, we can get through a winter for $500 with propane water heater and propane stove, and yeah. So maybe it might be if they're trying to get it affordable. I know that you might be able to buy a used propane tank and bring it in. And then, depending on who your propane supplier is, they may get fussy about, no, you got to get it from us, or you got to lease it from us. Them delivering that propane and you putting it in is going to save those people money in the first year. In the long haul, there's nothing worse than somebody who couldn't pay their electric bill and or the electric got shut off and they went somewhere else to get warm and the cold comes in and freezes and busts all the pipes. There's nothing more expensive because not only are you fixing the broken fixtures and pipes, you're fixing the cabinets, you're fixing the floors, you're fixing the walls. There's nothing worse than that. Wood heat is not conducive for renting. I know there's some exceptions to that rule, but wood heat is not. So, you know,
Ed Thrumble says, thanks for making these videos. You guys should write a book about mobile home maintenance and repair. I'd buy it.
okay.
And
Well,
I said I'm trying to get him to start a course membership site.
what I try to do is share with you guys what I've learned, not only as a maintenance guy or repair guy, but also as an owner. I live in a mobile home. You can't tell it, but I try not to make it look too fancy because I don't want to pay taxes. I pay taxes. I don't want to. So I'd rather not look too fancy. Matter of fact, Christina knows that as my wife. She had no idea who I really was. She had her viewpoints about people who have money. And I'm not claiming I have a lot of it. I put my money away into different things, but she had no idea. So to look at me driving an older truck, which I do because I get the same tax deduction per mile driving an older truck and as a new one, and I just don't like payments and I don't like paying taxes. So what I'm sharing with you guys is what I've learned. You can disagree and you can become a multimillionaire with other viewpoints. I'm just trying to share with you what I've learned, and I'll be happy to do it. And this is for people that want the help, and that's okay if you don't want the help and you don't agree with me. I don't have a problem defending myself. I know that a lot of people say, well, you should went and spend all this much more money. You know what? I'm working for somebody else. They're the ones that decide what the money is that we spend and what their budget is, you know. Maybe they don't want to, maybe they like a plain looking interior. Maybe they like a specific kind of siding. So one of the complaints I've heard people say is like, hey, you didn't show the whole thing. Well, I'm working somebody else's house, and sometimes they don't want me to do, videos right in the middle of a hurry up job. I'm sorry, but I will have to find, and I discount, I don't charge them for the time that I'm having to set up do a video or explain. But I won't go out of my way not to do that. So what I'm sharing with you is where I have the opportunity and where I would be wanting to help somebody. So I try to talk to the camera like I'm talking to somebody I know, and I hope to pass on and help you guys with what I know and share with what I've experienced. Sometimes the experience was not a good experience, but anyway, hopefully. If you guys got any questions along the way that pop up, just call them. It doesn't matter if we've already talked about it. I don't mind talking about it again. It keeps my memory challenged. Again, the siding choices there's a lot out there. Probably the insulated siding is long haul better, but I certainly going to tell you, you're going to spend some money. The answer to every question is hard work for me. If I want to get along with Christina, I got to work hard at it. It's just so if you want to be successful at anything, you work hard at it. If you want to live a long time, work hard at it. If you want your home to last a long time, work hard at it. Don't look for an easy way out. Life is not a vacation, and if it was, we'd all die early because we never did live and work hard. Enjoy your life, but understand that living hard and not wearing yourself out, but living tough and getting out there and doing it is what's going to make your life is going to be full. And I want you guys to be happy with the progress that you make. And I'm here, the way I get energy in the work that I do, I had to change my mind some 20 years ago because of, I think, a guy named Zig Ziglar. He said, the way you get more energy is to tell yourself what you're doing is making other people's lives better. And I was like, well, that's, he's selling stuff. But no, it actually works as a repair guy. You're there to make their life better. And if you tell yourself that, even if it's to make your life better, the reason I'm working is to make someone else's life better. You get more energy from it than saying, man, why is it I'm the guy that always has to fix something else? Why did it have to break down now? Why did I get a leak? Why did, you're there to make other people's lives better. The people that are living with you or you yourself, you're making your life better. That's what you're doing. You get more energy from that. And that's what I'm doing by doing these videos. YouTube does not begin to pay what it actual. I think we're making 0.5 cent a view if we're fortunate. Christina's been working at it for right at 4 years. It's going to take a long time to ever pay her what she's worth.
Minimum wage.
So we're doing this. Originally, I started out doing this kind of videos with YouTube because I was outliving my customers. They were no longer, needing my services. So I was like, well, the people I'm dealing with now don't know me. I'll have these videos. How about we do these videos so they can actually not have to take my word for it. They can actually see me doing it. So as a resume is what I did YouTube videos for, if that makes any sense. Plus we have the website all set. So you might consider my motives is not about making money when it comes to YouTube. And she certainly is, she's just doing it because she's being nice to me. I think she makes,
because I don't want a real job.
yeah, she doesn't want to go back to the nursing home work that she used to do. Which, we've been together for like 11 years. And she and I, believe it or not, and I don't need confirmation, but I tell you, we've not had a fight. We've had no argument. So that says something about our relationship. 11 years and no fight. She's been irritated with me, I bet. But we just don't fight. We both like each other and we love each other. And so we're doing this to share in the community. And you guys are welcome to call in and ask questions. I'll try to get to them. And with what limited knowledge I have no motive for any particular brand. Nobody owns me, at least not at this point. If there's a brand out there that starts sponsoring me, it's because I think that brand is legitimate.
We've turned down a lot of opportunities because they were not appropriate for you guys.
Right. Games, video games, I don't need them to sponsor me. Other things such as that. Okay. If I don't believe in it, I'm not gonna say it. I figured this one thing that I think about the YouTube videos is that I think that in the long haul, when I'm gone, my ghost will still be on the internet. So.
And it's evergreen. So.
Yeah, these are the things we're talking about and sharing. Are things that are going to be used for a long, long time. It's an option. And so I feel like all you guys are my friends. I don't consider any of you my enemies or my objects to take advantage of. I just want to share with you guys what I've learned, as opposed to just dying with it. What am I going to do with that when I fall into a hole and die? Why not share it? Why not be helpful to other people? I believe that somebody's watching me and they look after me because I look after other people. So anyway, I'm running on and I can do that. All right, we're going to see you guys later. We'll try to come up with another subject to talk about next time, next Saturday. All right, see you later. How was that? So people are watching.
They're still watching. A couple people said thank you.